It is time to get started. We are here. Boy, I do look bright, don't I? Wow, it's a little brighter than I intended. Okay, that's it. We're gonna live with that. Welcome here. We are live in the Nutmeg Tavern, and I am your host, John Townsend. Are you gonna come in here? Whoops, you were trying to attack my thing. Actually, I want that camera turned down instead of that. Okay. No, she looks at me like, you can't do that. Okay. You want to pop in here and try to change the aperture on that instead of the focus.
You can keep talking.
You can just change the lens itself. It's manual. You can do it. You can. He's not going to ruin everything. I don't know. It looks like somebody did some gift membership there. Look at that. It's lightning in here, everyone.
You're a little dimmer now.
Welcome to the Nutmeg Tavern. Today is a wonderful episode we're going to be doing on buttons. Both because we sell lots of kinds of buttons, and I wanted to talk about those buttons, and buttons are incredibly important in the 18th century. You know, we don't think about that today. You know, buttons. It's like, what? Why? You know, you've got buttons on your shirt. Nobody goes to the store to buy buttons anymore. We don't really pay that much attention. Buttons are made by the cajillion in factories, and we just don't even think about how important buttons are. But buttons were an important industry in the 18th century, and people were very, very interested in them, and they became super fashionable, and it's just all kinds of weird things about buttons. In fact, there were laws about buttons. When was the last time we thought about, it's like, well, you know, there's a button law, you know, right? So there was a button law that started in Great Britain in the 17th century, and continued to be part of the lawmaking process until the latter part of the 18th century, and it probably still was on the books even into the 19th century when they finally got rid of that kind of stuff. But the laws there were some sumptuary laws, which were trying to keep people from dressing too fancy. Sort of like, you know, the Amish today. You know, you shouldn't dress fancy, sort of as a moral thing. But most of the button laws in the 18th century in Great Britain were laws that were more about protectionism. They wanted to encourage certain industries, and the button industry was one of those ones they wanted to encourage. So there were laws against or discouraging imported buttons, as well as buttons made of products that weren't as industrially demanding. So there were cloth-covered buttons. They got very popular in the latter part of the 18th century. Well, one of the reasons why they get more sort of popular is because in the earlier part of the 18th century, they were outlawed. How dare you use an inexpensive button on your garment when you should be using something more expensive? And so that's one of the things that's going on in the 18th century. Some of that carries into the colonies, but only if they felt like applying it. It's very interesting to see what happens with the way laws are applied in the North American colonies versus Great Britain at the time. They just sort of pick and choose when they felt like it. It's like, oh, we like that one, we don't like that one. You know, so there are some instances where people were fined for wearing cloth-covered buttons in North America in the 18th century. So we did find a little bit of that. Ivy found that, thought that was pretty funny. But we've got some images here. We're going to start off with images that are about the button making process. So let's jump into that. This is part of an arts and trades book, basically a little book for people who are, it's like, what kind of industry should my child go into? What kind of job should they be looking for? And button maker was one of them. And there were multiple. I mean, there's like 10 different ways you can make a button in the 18th century. I mean, probably 20 different ways. But this is just one of the ways. They would cut little planchets of blank metal, and then here's a person using a sort of a a drop hammer. Drop hammer's a little bit different than this, but a pressing technique where they would drop this weighted die on top of the little planchet of metal, sort of like what you might use to coin a button or a coin for money, but this is for a button, and then they would turn that over and solder a back to it, and it would become a fancy kind of pressed button. But there were lots of other kinds of ways of making buttons. Here is some of the button plates from Diderot's Encyclopedia, and these folks are making buttons from horns. So somebody's cutting horn off in the back, they cut it into slabs, and then they drill it or use different kinds of tools to cut it into button-shaped pieces, and they'll do different things with it. They even will turn it on lathes, so we see different sort of plain lathes there in the background. Some of the buttons are more than just horns. Some of these are metal. And here are some of the tools they're using here. We can see a lathe that they're actually a tiny little lathe that they're using to turn the button shapes with. And if you look very closely, that little lathe is made to do not just circular, not just to shape it into a dome shape or cut little grooves into it that are concentric circles, but that little lever is made so that it would go up and down as the button turned around, and you could make different geometric shapes with it. Lots of other tools. So we got other people working in the background on different types of buttons, buttons made with threads, as well as cloth buttons. These are sort of spinning machines that spin threads in a particular way to make these fancy thread buttons. Here are some button examples. These are metal buttons from the Met. And we can see that they are pewter probably, and they've got lots of different kinds of basket weave look to them, or different styles. Some of these were probably made with that die technique where the die comes down and hits it, or possibly cast into these shapes. Although generally, if you want a sharper image, the die is going to give you a much sharper image than a button that is cast. Some of these buttons were probably a very, very thin metal that had like a two-part front and back, and you would fill the center part with something like wax or other material to keep it from easily crushing. There are so many interesting techniques. This is an image of a pewter button mold, and sometimes I've got one lying around here. But there's a three-part button mold there on the bottom. The tops are spoon molds. But the button face is in the lower center part of it. The two arms kind of close up, and they form the shank of that button. And then you would pour pewter down through the center of that, and you could cast individual buttons. Buttons show up in artwork on people all the time, but they're generally fairly small, so it's hard to see exactly what's going on with the buttons. But this person has a very fancy coat, and his buttons match. They look like they might be cloth-covered buttons, but since those were sometimes...
Maybe he's skirting the law.
Maybe he's
it's hard
skirting
to
the
say.
law. Or they could be thread buttons made to match the color, which is probably what they are. Because it looks like he's too, he would want to keep the law, right? Mm-hmm. Of course he would. So here we go. Monday, a reputable publican was carried before the magistrate at the west end of town for wearing a pair of nankeen breeches with buttons covered with the same stuff, who, on the publican's admitting the buttons to be cut off in his presence, mitigated the penalty by 1 guinea. So if he would have said, no, you can't cut my buttons off, he would have been fined more money. So somebody's getting in trouble for wearing stuff. Here we go. Aforesaid, for wearing a waistcoat with buttons covered with the same stuff as the waistcoat was made of. Contrary, the statute of 7th of George I was fined 20 shillings for 6 buttons, which he paid accordingly. This is New Hampshire, and this is 1768. Pretty late for that kind of thing going on. Really, by that time, a lot of these laws were being ignored in Great Britain, and cloth-covered buttons were getting to be more expensive. Yes, you can drink whenever I say the word button, but you will be needing to go to the bathroom very soon, because I'm going to say that the closure on his outfit. Here's Samuel Adams. Again, the outfits of the time period used a large quantity of these closures for decoration, for actual purposes of closing the garment up and holding it closed. They weren't using snaps. They were
essential for propriety.
Yes, exactly. Here are some super fancy buttons that are in a like a pattern book or a salesman's book from the 1790s. And these things are just incredible. They're like fabric with glass covering them or something. I don't even know what's going on. Super fancy buttons from the time period. So, and there are sort of jokes or not jokes of the time period that some buttons, it was one of those ways that you could show off your extreme wealth. And so you would have buttons that might be worth as much as your entire outfit.
But these are illegal to wear, right, in most cases?
Yeah, you could definitely wear those.
So you can show them off in your private collection, but like out in public.
No, you could wear them.
You could wear these.
You could wear them, yeah. So it was one of those, it's sort of like jewelry that men can wear.
Oh, okay. We need to bring that back.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, well, check out my $10,000 button. Here's a close-up of a thread button on the one side, and a different style of thread button there. It's kind of white on white, so it's a little trickier to see, but a very fancy way of putting together thread buttons to make interesting looking pieces. Let's see what we got here. To be sold, Captain James Child. And he's got lots of fabrics, broadcloths, duroys. And then it says, I mean, this is like the third line down. Silk and hair, death's head buttons. And then I think he's got some other, does he have buttons down further? He's talking about threads and tapes, watches, fans. I guess it's just the buttons at the top. Look, he's even selling Cheshire cheese, just in case, and nutmeg.
He's covering all of it.
And bar iron. I mean, he's got it all. But right up here at the very top, a silk and hair death's head buttons. And the hair here is probably horsehair, and it's horsehair in the time period is woven into fabrics and used like a very, very sturdy kind of thread. So hair is, let's say a fancy kind of cloth, but it is made of horsehair.
Very nice. Now let's see Paul Allen's horsehair button.
Yeah. Okay. This sort of diamond shape that's going on here with his buttons are death's head buttons. So it doesn't mean it actually has a little skull on it or anything, but it's kind of an X shape that's going on. Just because the fibers the fibers come in and in a kind of an X shape going one way and then another, and that's why you've got that kind of terminology for it. So we've got over here gaiters, and it's one of the, it's like the military going nuts. So can you imagine buttoning all these little tiny buttons together so that you can get the entire leggings to go? I mean, I don't know, like 25 buttons, 30 buttons, and they're little, and they're really hard to do on the side of your leg, way down low. These are horn buttons. Sometimes they might use buttons made of leather or even pewter buttons, although pewter buttons, you fall down with a bunch of pewter buttons on the side of your leg like that, and you're going to be like injured. You're going to be crippled for the rest of your life because of what they do. But somebody mentioned in the main part of the video about button hooks. So button hooks were popular in the 19th century because of the buttons, like the ladies' gowns have all these little tiny buttons all over them, and the shoes and boots that have buttons. But something like the gaiters button hook is incredibly important too. So no, that's not Ivy in the background. So yeah, button hooks, and we do offer button hooks on there. We'll talk about those in a little bit. Here's a shirt there in the center. It's got buttons not just down the center, but along the sides for buttoning on special collars and whatnot. There's some leather breeches, or actually trousers here. I don't even know what those are. They're halfway. They get really skinny legged. So
They're French, right?
yeah, they're kind of breeches, kind of like they couldn't tell what they couldn't decide. Somewhere in the middle.
I'm
What do they
wondering,
call them,
maybe
capris
sometimes
today?
you're like, maybe they were for wearing with riding boots, right? And so it was, they wanted them
Right.
to be in between or something.
Right, so they would go down inside the boot, but then they really didn't.
I'm making that up. I don't know what they're
I
for.
think it's
Just
probably a
speculation.
good. I think you're probably right there. You can see though the buttons on those are either shell or bone. Probably shell on the top, but we can't see them close enough.
Yeah, someone was asking about mother of pearl, and some
Yes.
of them are specifically described as
Yeah,
shell and mother
right.
of pearl.
Oh,
I don't know
yeah.
that I have any specific of the fancier mother of pearl buttons, but I did find some very, very fancy.
Right, exactly. Here we have an early 1720s to 1740s men's waistcoat with very, I don't know if you can see them, but very interesting buttons. Probably thread covered. Does it
I
say
think
covered with?
it says that they're made
with a
with a
buttonhole
buttonhole stitch.
Right. So basically a thread button.
Right,
but-
and they are very beautiful. This was about as much as I could blow them up before we lost definition, but very,
very interesting, and matching and all that good stuff. Although I would wonder that as you're putting that on and off, the finger
Yes.
grease would color the buttons.
right. Maybe your valet with gloves would
Right.
have to gently.
Right. It's like, don't get my buttons dirty.
Don't
you-
eat Cheetos before putting this
Right. Don't
on.
eat Cheetos before putting on this waistcoat.
Well, and you would want to, of course, not like if you put too much pressure on the thread, it might mess up the thread on the
Right.
button.
That's coming out of your paycheck.
Yeah. Don't be messing up my buttons. So that's that. Now, we thought about these earlier, but I'm pretty sure, yeah, you wrote on it. Covered with small circles of embroidery to match. So these buttons almost look like they were porcelain or something, which some buttons were porcelain in the time period. But these are embroidered to match the vest. Can you imagine how expensive this would be? Now, we would look at this and it's like, oh, that's printed. No.
Nope.
Every single one of those flowers and little things, see how they match, and that's all hand embroidered. And the buttons were done individually and then sewn up so that they would match that. Yes, they were dandies in the time period.
yeah.
Can you even imagine?
And you can tell,
Not my
right?
buttons.
Yeah.
From them writing about it, that a lot of times they were trying their best to act. It was like an Olympics of
Yeah.
fashion, right? They were doing their best to act.
It's very much like
I'd flex, but then my buttons would pop out.
I blinded somebody with my buttons popping off. But we'll get to blinding with buttons here in a little bit. Yellow-green ribbed silk with self-covered buttons down the front. Now that's a color. You really...
Yep. Had some matching breeches too.
Yeah, wow.
That takes some
This person-
confidence right there.
Yep. Yeah,
Right.
you gotta... I can do this.
Mommy's favorite boy.
Yeah, so here we go. Now notice how, on the left-hand side, how big the buttons are getting. This got to be ludicrous toward the end of the 18th century. So much so that they were making fun of it in cartoons. So these basically very expensive steel-cut buttons were starting to be made, and they got bigger and bigger to show off everybody's wealth. And here's that person being, it's like their mirrored buttons are blasting your eyes when you go out in the sunlight. But then again, her hair was crazy too, and I mean, the fashions just got insane. Now, I think it happens in every age, right? People, they're well-to-do, and they have to figure out a way to show it. Is it a $1,000 cell phone? Is it a crazy car? Is it a vest that is just way too expensive? They're doing it, and it is in spades in the 18th century. Now, this is Great Britain. This is France. This is not, clothing did not become the same kind of thing in the colonies. In fact, it was a statement that the colonies were saying. When we get to the middle and the latter part of the 18th century, where they're wearing much plainer clothing, and they're like, we are not insane like they are, right? So that was definitely, something that was going on, statement-wise. Yeah, and here they really start to really make fun of the.
I love the guy with the hat on his head. He's
Right.
got his
Well,
hat has a
sometimes they
special-
did have a little button on the top, right? But
Hey.
now this one's like a saucer up
In
there.
a duel, that might block a bullet.
Yeah.
Like,
Yep. And here is an advertisement, a trade card, basically, in the center here. J. Smith at the Parrot opposite the Pump, St. Paul's Churchyard. It sells all sorts of necklaces, earrings, all kinds of jewelry, jeweler's work as buttons, buckles, and all sorts of etc., even toys. Notice the buttons are here right with jewelry. They are jewelry in the time period. They're just much more. Now, we could even see on these gentlemen on either side, notice how big their shoe buckles are. That became a thing toward the end of the 18th century too. Shoe buckles started to get bigger and bigger, and they would start to put jewels on them and make them out of gold and, whatever. And of course, they became something that thieves would steal. It's like, I knocked him down, stole his shoe buckles.
I was wondering, do buttons become something that you just find? Oh,
Oh, yeah.
dang, half my buttons are gone. I walked out for 5 minutes.
Right, somebody walks behind you with a razor, and off goes your.
Well, and if your buttons are made of gold,
Yeah.
they are, and I don't, as far as I know, they weren't gold plated. They were, some of them may have been.
Yeah, they were gilt buttons,
Oh, okay.
so some of them were just covered with a thin layer, but they may, some people are having the real thing. Definitely. Here we go, a well-to-do lady and her riding habit. Now, these riding habits were made to mimic military outfits of the time period. So this has got the military braid around the buttonhole and military style metal buttons, even on the cuffs. Very, very, it's like wearing camo today or something.
Yeah.
It's really strange.
So this design was specifically was it just because of fashion thing, or was it promoting their military? Like, hey,
probably both.
I'm proud of.
Probably both.
Yeah, this was one of the few, because of course the women's outfits do not use buttons as much. You will
Right.
see them from time to time. So, but I wanted to bring her in so that we could see
Right.
them.
But she's complete. I mean, even her waistcoat
Of course.
that's going down. I mean, it's truly a kind of. She even has epaulets.
Yes, she does,
It's
right?
Totally hilarious. But she is Lady Worsley, so. Now, here we're going or not much later, but going later into probably 1790s to 1800, maybe even 1805, 1810. And the boy is wearing trousers here, and his jacket with all the buttons, typical of the time period. Of course, her outfit is very buttonless, so no buttons there. Gold lace and yeah. Now this is early. Notice how giant the cuffs are on the coat. We were talking about coat cuffs earlier this week. and the fancy braid and probably gilt, at least buttons, if not the real thing here on this guy's coat. More like 1805, 1810 here in the coat, almost very navy looking, and he's got cloth covered buttons on the waistcoat, metal buttons, probably brass buttons on his jacket there. Fancy metal buttons on the gentleman's coat. The boy's jacket has metal buttons. We can see his breeches have a breeches buckle, but cloth covered buttons. So kind of, going multiple ways here with this, his matching outfit. Getting closer to the military thing, although this is a strange kind of coat with the buttons that there are gaps in it, which is odd, but notice there's the braid around the cuffs with the buttons, braid around the buttons. You can get a kind of closer look. Those buttons are the strangest, sort of fancy with a moon rock blob in the middle. I don't know what's in the middle of that button. Just, it's like the guy messed up. I don't know. They are not beautiful buttons. Then notice this is Continental Army uniform, and I kind of wanted to touch base on this concept, and we will when we're looking at other buttons. So here's a 29th Regiment of Foot button at the top. Notice the button on the back has the name of the people who made it, something London. I'm not sure what the name is. It's upside down. On this other button, same thing, the 38th button. Those buttons were both made with that drop hammer effect, or a dropped die that stamps both the front and the back at the same time. And Jennings, London, is on the back of that button. The date is wrong there on that bottom one. I don't think it's from 1912 to 1924. But hey, I don't know. It could be wrong. Do you know what was going on with
I
that?
don't know specifically, unfortunately. I didn't make that slide I did,
Okay.
so.
There we go. Here we've got a uniform button, and 1767, I believe is what it says, Massachusetts button with an eagle on it. Could be 87. It's probably 87. And then this is very interesting. The 1789 George Washington inaugural button. I'm not sure if they were, whether you got one button to just
Yeah,
put
like
on, like
to
it
wear on
was
a cockade or, you know.
Right. Not a clothing button, but like a,
Yeah.
like you
a
would pin a
commemoration.
button on
Yeah,
today.
absolutely.
Right. This is a book page out of this book here, which is the archaeological investigation of Fort Ligonier in Pennsylvania. And so we can see when they did the archaeological work in the 1960s, they took a picture of all the different kinds of buttons that they found there. So I don't know, I didn't look in this one specifically because it's not as impressive as this book, which is this one. This one's Fort Michilimackinac archaeological dig book. It's a bigger book. They dug deeper. I don't know what to tell you. In the button section of this, there are like 6 or 8 pages. They found 1,300 button examples while they were doing the archaeological work at Fort Michilimackinac, and the vast majority of them, they just found one button. But of the plain pewter styles that we'll talk about later, they found 30 of the super plain ones, and there was a couple of them that they found 9 of or 3 of, and the rest of them, there's like a single example. A lot of these are buttons you find that fell into the privy, right? And then bloop, button falls off, and you're not going to go get that.
Unless it was gold.
Well, maybe. Come find me if I don't come back in 20 minutes. So they show the buttons, talk about each and every one of the different kinds of styles. Not each and every one, but representative buttons of different kinds of styles, different types here. So the common button that they're finding here, that shows up in the dig. Now, there may have been more common button that was there, but they couldn't find them because they were wood or something, right? But the metal buttons and other buttons that show up, pewter buttons that are cast are the most popular ones to find. Then you see, all kinds of different styles of buttons. So here are some of the fancier ones that were made out of thin sheets of metal, filled. They had some that were little jewels. They had a bunch of now this doesn't include the cufflinks.
Right.
There's a whole separate section of cufflinks.
I didn't bring cufflinks into it, right? Like, oh, don't want to get
cufflinks
distracted.
are basically two little buttons hooked together. So there are lots of really, really, really interesting stuff about buttons. I'm at the halfway mark. I'm gonna let you chat for a second.
All right.
Take a breath, John.
Take a drink. Okay, so here's the 50 Townsend's gift memberships from Truth the Not So Sated, who says, I love this channel, so thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Always very fun to bring more people in, so that's great. And then here's a super chat from Maxar Cool. Please talk about button hooks and when someone might want or need to use one if they used them in the 18th century. Thanks.
Yeah, and button hooks are very easy to find documented in the 19th century. A little harder in the 18th century. It's probably been 5 years since I have looked deeply into button hooks, so I can't answer your question beyond that.
But we did want to offer them because the gaiters are quite tricky to do yourself without a button hook. I'm sure you can do it, but the button hook really helps.
It does. And Josh makes these down in the downstairs. So down below the Nutmeg Tavern.
I'm going to drop a link to it in the chat.
Okay.
And then here's a super chat from The Waits Experience. Just a super chat, no comment. Thank you. And then here's a member chat from Apocalyptosips Lips. Hello, I love this channel. And then a crow, or possibly turkey, and John.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. It's a bird.
We did it. So at some point we knew what it was.
It's a bird.
And then here's Speed and Style Tony with the super chat. Was there any substance available that was not used for buttons, say pottery?
Actually, the substance I went looking for, which I remember talking to someone about it, but I could not find reference to it today. I really wanted to because I thought it would be great, but it possibly apocryphal, okay? Because I didn't have a week to look for it. But in theory, there were German soldiers in the 18th century that had cheese so hard they could make buttons out of it.
I see. Oof. I was thinking about ship's biscuits. I'm like, because you're like, are there food items? You're like, I guess.
There's also a reference here somewhere in the 18th century. So one of the problems was that all these buttons and tin in the time period was coming from Great Britain, right? So we talked about tin and pewter and the metal, where a lot of these buttons are made out of tin, and that tin is coming from particular places in Great Britain. Well, that's a problem if you're embargoed, right? So, Great Britain is against you, and where you're supposed to get your button. Where are all these pewter buttons supposed to come from for the colonial military?
Because we don't have tin here, right?
Exactly.
So what are we going to start making our buttons
So there was a particular person who was encouraging the use of paper mache buttons. So there were some people making paper mache, and I wanted to show this. Okay, let me see if I can reach it. Ouch.
Oh, you strained something.
My guts.
Oh no.
Here's a little box. I don't know if I can show it here. Go ahead. It's probably out of focus. Punch me up. There we go. Yeah, it's kind of out of focus. But this is a box from the time period that is made out of paper mache. So they made things out of super compressed paper, basically, in the time period. And you could make a good button out of paper mache and when we think of paper mache, we think of it, not being sturdy.
That hard.
Right. But this one's lasted 200 years, so you can.
Whoever made it did a great job.
Right. Every week I try to get to the new and renewing YouTube members as well as brand new Patreon. I don't have any brand new Patreon people, so somebody do that. Anyway, here's new and renewing YouTube members. Crone Shadow, Reese Van Bardwick, The Bit Janitor, Denny Quillen, Kimberly Dew, Hyperion F, Neck Romancer, Tasha Novak, Haas Delgado, and Nils Iron Wolf. So we all wish we could have a name like Iron Wolf.
Pretty dope.
Just Iron Wolf. Okay. We're gonna talk about the buttons that we sell here at James Johnson & Son. And I got this little side camera here so you can see all these crazy buttons. So here are one of the popular buttons we use for shirts, and that is hot. Hold on. Come on. I can do it. There.
Right.
That's better. These are bone buttons. So many of the buttons from the time period are made either from animal bone or from horn. And these are bone buttons of the time period. Now we see a button like that and we think, well, I mean, it's plastic. You know, if it was on a shirt today, it would be plastic, or possibly if it's high end, it's mother of pearl. I don't know how popular mother of pearl buttons were in the time period. Mother of pearl buttons get to be extremely popular with the freshwater mother of pearl industry that happens in the 19th century in North America. So here are, very white, here are a bunch of different fancy style buttons that are mother of pearl buttons. These are made by, these were from one of the factories that made those buttons in Iowa and different, or in Illinois, right along the Mississippi River, where they could get all those shells where the mother of pearl comes from. You know, maybe it's happening in the 18th century. It's harder for me to find that. So let's see, what have I got here? I got a lot of buttons here, folks. Here we go. Here are horn buttons of the time period, or styles. There's a little bit harder to find in the, you know, these are black horn buttons. They might make them out of buffalo horn, out of cow horn. They might be a little more shaped than these. These are just very, very square, just discs. Just you cut the horn off and you drill 2 holes in it, and that is it. A fairly low-end style of button. Then we have probably the well, I don't know. Is it the lowest of the time period? Little horn or little wood buttons. Again, simplistic, and they could be made in very cottage industry style kind of locations. These are fairly fancy turned ones, but okay, where are the buttons I really want? This is probably like was shown on the in the archaeological dig. A button like this is the most popular button, at least that shows up in the digs, right? So maybe your cloth button or buttons that are made out of something like wood that would deteriorate might be more popular, but more than likely this is the most popular button that you would find on men's pants and waistcoats. These are just plain flat on the front. These are cast in little molds. In the time period, they might cast 3 at a time, or a dozen at a time. But this is a big part of the industry, making simple, just plain fronted pewter buttons. And you could engrave a simple pattern on them if you wanted to. There are slightly more fancy and heavier buttons that are similar, cast buttons, pewter buttons, that are dome shape. The pewter is wonderful because it melts at a fairly low temperature and very easy to work with. So it's one of the reasons why you see it so often.
That and it's not lead, so.
Well, you could make buttons out of lead, but they
you're
don't
not
stay
eating
shiny.
off of it. It's fine.
The problem is the lead will it reacts with the atmosphere in a different way. So it'll either turn black or you'll get lead oxide, white, and not only is it poisonous, but they just don't look good for very long.
I bet they tarnish your clothes too and get messy.
That is true also, as well as being even heavier. So your garment is already heavy.
Yeah.
And by the time you put 100 lead buttons on it, well, don't fall in the water. These are brass, so sheet brass, stamped into a particular shape. They might use a hand die to hammer these into shape, and then they would solder the individual backs on them. Notice today we don't use that many shanked buttons, but shanked buttons in the time period, because the button, they wanted it to look pretty. So the front of the button,
they look pretty, but they are, because we don't use them a lot. The fact that they are little Houdinis who do their best to escape at every opportunity can take people by surprise.
Right.
There's a reason people found all these buttons in archaeological
They
days.
tend to cut themselves off.
They sure do.
It's like, I will escape.
I wonder how many Navy men were like, working on the ropes and their buttons get cut. They're like, let me free, I'm stuck.
Yeah, help. Just flat buttons, made in different styles. We can take these flat buttons and we can put lots of different designs on them. And sometimes we do a design that emulates the thread buttons. So you can cut designs on them individually, or in this case, these designs are molded. We cast this directly into the button face. But that also gives us the ability to do lots of fancy buttons. So we can do navy buttons, as well as different military style buttons. Do I have some here? Oh yeah, here we go. So military buttons, King's 8s. This one is a, can I get it right side up? Probably not. This is Puerto Rico. So there was a Puerto Rico outfit, military group. There's the 74th afoot, and here is the frog-legged eagle button. So notice how ugly it is. This is so the American button industry after the Revolutionary War took a while to really take off. These frog-legged eagle buttons were from the 1790s, and you could see that maybe our engraving wasn't really kind of up to snuff yet.
Whenever I go to get these from Josh, he always comments on the fact that, it was a frontier artist.
Yeah.
It's, the guy in charge is like, go make me an eagle. And he's like,
okay.
Oh, all right.
This is the best I can do. I mean, it's not exactly, wouldn't give it to my mom, but. So 1790s, at this same time period, between in the 1790s, before we get to 1812, the military of the United States really gets shrunk down. So they're thinking, hey, peace dividend, let's just get rid of all the military. So they really didn't have, I think it got down to just 4 different corps, regiments, you want to call it. This is an emulation or a copy of what the buttons looked like in, say, 1800, 1805. And they just had 4 different ones. They made them up to a 16 in the center, but they only had 4. So, and after a while, they ran out of buttons, and they would just issue. It's like, I'm in the first. Well, you're gonna wear 16 buttons.
Yeah,
whatever.
Just scrape off the 6.
Right, or just ignore the number on your button. So this is the United States first button. By the time we get to 1812, they are fixing that. There's a button from the 60th a foot, which is the British regiment that was made up of Royal Americans. The Royal Americans.
That button is fighting
Yeah,
you.
it does not want to.
It's heavier on the 6th side.
There. There are, and I don't have these in any kind of order, Pennsylvania, military button from the Revolutionary War. These are all reproductions. None of these are the original. What have I got here? This is, I think that's Spanish artillery, I believe. And this one, now notice this little, I believe that little circle sort of joined at the top with the little dot and the 3. I think that's the French style. So here we are in America, we're at war with Great Britain, and the French supply us with some uniforms, and they also supply us with their generic numbered buttons. So, so this is, I believe, the French numbered button style. Here's a tiny little U.S. button from the War of 1812, and you can see the little, I'm on the wrong side, see the little rope circle, or actually I think it's a circle of stars down there at the bottom. So it was supposed to have your like regiment number in it, but they couldn't keep up with that, so they just left it hollow. So and then after a while they thought it was kind of like, well, it's a hollow thing. Shouldn't we put something in there? So they put a little star in there. It's like, we're just going to put a star in there.
Good.
See, I thought it was weird that they didn't just take away the circle and make
No, we're going to put a
design
star
bigger,
in
but
there.
you're like, that'd take changing the pattern to it.
What was like the budget per soldier?
Yeah.
How many buttons? Like this is the soldier's kit. Like
Right, and if you lose too many buttons, no more buttons for
Yeah.
you. You're just
Right.
gonna have to.
yeah.
Classic USA buttons from Revolutionary War. So a lot of times kind of a generic button that you would put on regimental coat, on the breeches. They would have small buttons also, and it would work for everybody. We can just, it's like, we're not going to have individual regimental buttons. That's too hard to figure out. We're just going to give everybody a USA button. So that is what those were kind of like. What else? Here's a artillery button. This one might be Corps of Discovery or War of 1812. I'm not sure. The Corps of Discovery had a button that was similar to that. So there we go. This is, we just make these up because people really need, they need a pirate button.
I mean,
and
yeah.
so we offer those in case you're in dire need of the proper style.
Because that's what pirates did. As soon as you became a pirate, they're like,
Right,
okay,
it's like,
we got a
wait,
special button just
where's
for
our
you.
button?
Much for you. You scraped off your regimental button and you put the skull and
That's
crossbones
right.
on it.
I did want to show
Or
this.
blades.
This is that artillery button, but I want to show the back side of it. It even casts with the original. It's not actually made by that company, but the button that we cast from has the original company's design on the back side of it. Don't tell them. Okay, it was 200 years
Well,
ago.
that's how we got the mold. You're like, it's as close to the original
That's
as we
right.
can get.
That's right. And then we'll put the nutmeg back on there. So that's sort of what buttons are like in time period. Tons and tons. I got like a gazillion. I don't know who's gonna put all these buttons away. It's not gonna be me.
I'll do it, John.
Yeah, I know. I'll do it, John.
I know where they go.
A massively important part of what's going on with, I mean, it identifies you. It identifies you where you are in your class, or what military outfit you're with, whether you're rich, whether you're poor. Do you have all your buttons? Are half your buttons missing?
Are you a pirate?
Yeah, are you a pirate? Let me show this button hook close up, just because we are. Oops, that's not what I wanted. There's the button hook close up, and it is a little kind of fussy to get. Once you know how to work it, it's
Need some practice now.
interesting, but it definitely is for smaller buttons. It's meant specifically to help you grip those smaller buttons. Not easy to do without a helper. And I can see how in, say, like the 1880s, 1890s, when the buttons got very, very, very small, and you got a whole bunch of them, a tool like that became indispensable. So you could talk.
So somebody was asking about the materials from what you were describing about the books. It sounds like pewter is the most common. Is that the case? The most common material,
Yeah.
at least for the ones that they've found.
Right. So, I mean, we would have to do a meta study for that. But in the Fort Michilimackinac dig, out of the 1,300 buttons, most of them are onesies. I found one. I found one of this, one of that. The majority. So if you found 30 of one kind of button, that really said something. That's the most popular button. Those were all pewter. In fact, the first whole page was pewter buttons. The second page was pewter buttons. Then you start getting into other button materials after that, and the fancier, more expensive buttons. But probably, at least in that context. Now remember, that's a military base. It's going to have, civilians in there, but it really, for that setting of people, pewter buttons are the most popular button.
And Style Tony sends in a member chat. Grandpa did Rendezvous and he had deer antler buttons.
Yes.
I didn't find any pictures of them, but
it's not the kind of European context.
there you go.
Also, antler buttons are, so a horn button is made, you cut the horn, you can cut the tip of the horn, which is solid horn. But of course, a horn is hollow after you get back very far. And so you have to turn the horn and cut out of the side of it, right? And antlers, you think, wait, they're like solid all the way through. But the center of an antler is very spongy. So again, you can get stuff out of the tip without having a problem with the center being spongy. But if you get back very far, then antler buttons, you have to again cut them from their side, and you can make some very beautiful antler buttons.
okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No buttons made out of nutmeg.
Well, but you could. I mean,
Well-
surely you could, and then that way you'd have nutmeg for emergencies.
Well, you've got the same problem. Here, so see what's happening inside the nutmeg? So
you think it's too spongy on the
yeah, the
inside?
center is spongy. That white part
That is sad.
kind of looks like a brain in there. It's the reason why is because it's good for your brain.
Of course, yes.
That's why I have a brain at all. Anyway, so this, I believe, I mean, I could make some and try it.
You could have an outfit made entirely with
nothing
nutmeg buttons.
But nutmeg. And what we could do is cut them so like across here, so that this
Oh, so it was
would be-
kind of
right, it would be kind of
rind, as it were.
dome shaped, right? And then this harder
Yes.
outside would hold the thread. So watch, next week I'm gonna have a nutmeg button. Good idea, thank you. This is gonna be a whole new industry.
Okay, I think I'm all caught up on my side.
I think buttons should be more popular today, especially since I sell buttons.
No bias here, we promise.
In fact, I think the whole world would change if everybody just... Anyway, yeah, buttons are fun and great, and there are some, people that just do button collecting, and buttons have been a thing for, they aren't popular now, but 100 years ago, in the early 20th century, buttons were a big thing. Now our buttons are just junk. Why bother? Why care about buttons at all? But there's some just amazingly beautiful buttons made in the 19th century, as well as these incredible ones from the 18th century and pieces you'll find in museums. I want to thank Ivy for helping today with some of the images, Lauren for helping, of course, Will back there on the console. Got a great video coming up this week. One of those ones where, Ryan and I work together and do this incredible one that I'm so surprised we haven't done this one before. So it's going to be a great episode and probably like a half hour long. No Oreo buttons. I would eat them before you could wear them. I want to thank everyone for coming into the Nutmeg Tavern today. And it's always enjoyable to come in. We dig deep on some of these topics that seem like, why would we care about buttons? It was so important in the 18th century, and we need to understand that some of the things that we think are really, really important today, in 50 years, no, it would be like, why did they even do that? So it helps us put ourselves into perspective. I hope you have a tremendous weekend. Thanks for watching.